One of the hardest things to do in parenting is figure out how much freedom to give your child, and we're going to talk about it today.
Hi, welcome to the Art of Fatherhood. I'm Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
What are we talking today about, Patrick?
Today we decided to talk about, today's topic is, the title is You're Going to Need a Longer Leash. And the idea being that parenting is this balance of how much freedom do you give your child to make mistakes and be in unsafe situations. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, if you give too much freedom, then the child just might disappear and die, right? And get into so much trouble that they die because they're running out into the street and get hit by a car. But if you...
Great story. Thanks for sharing.
Well, no, I mean, like, that obviously happens, right?
And then there's the other side of it.
The other side of it is you just have control over every aspect of their life, and they have mental problems, and they are not functional adults.
Right.
So...
In my book, I refer to it more as a net than a leash. Okay. Same exact.
Something you should have brought up before we started recording.
No, it's all right. It's the same exact principle. I mean, and I use this as a cheap way to promote my book by referencing the difference in the discussion term. But because you think about a net, if you are trying to stop a golf ball. Like a golf ball net is different than a soccer net. If you hit a golf ball into a soccer net, it's going to go right through, right? So, you know, the what we let through changes depending on how big of an object we want to let through.
We're going to keep having arguments about whether this is a leash or a net.
It could be it could be a net with a leash attached. It could be the new parenting tool called a leash. It's a net and a leash. You can't go fucking anywhere.
I know there's people in my life who have young children, and they are just all over those poor kids. And then, like, what's happening is right now is they take their eye off the kid for 1 second. Mm-hmm. Gone.
It's like an untrained dog.
Yeah, exactly. Just gone. You know what I mean? It's like, why is he so fast? Why does he run away? I'm like, because you don't let him do anything. Like, you don't let him explore. You don't give him the opportunity to make mistakes. And this is like I don't know if this is really true, but like there's definitely an old wives' myth that like you should let your kid burn their hand on the oven so they understand the consequences. Yeah. There's this whole like this is managing people too, but especially with parenting. It's like, I've always thought, my philosophy is always like, your job as a parent is they have to survive. Yeah. Right? And be not malnourished, right? Mm-hmm. Be healthy and live through childhood. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And there's going to be things that you can do as a parent with the leash and a net. I don't want to mix my metaphors too much. But there's things that you can let them fail at where there's no consequences in real life. And that's one of the reasons why you enroll them in activities. Because if you enroll them in a sport, then they learn those life lessons in an environment where they lose, they win, they have to work hard, they get yelled at. Like, it's all these things that happen in sports that are like life lessons that they can take away without usually serious consequences. Versus like the example, like, if they're about to run into the street in front of a car, you don't just let them go. You don't freaking grab them. Right. You don't let them make that mistake. Right. Because if they make that mistake, then the consequences are dire. So that's the balance that we're talking about.
And I think I think the solution is, one, everything needs to be a taught skill. So at the end of the day, there is no leash. Right. And they get to no leash very, very, very quickly. So we think we have them on a leash. I estimate that the minute that they head off to about middle school, the leash is almost non-existent. There's facades of a leash there, but it's non-existent because at that point in time, they're already spending more time somewhere else than with us. Number one. Number two, they've already are in a system that is allowing autonomy of movement So they can really go wherever they want, right? The only reason they stay in that school is because, for the most part, and there are some kids who don't stay in that school, they just leave. And why do they leave? Because the value of the consequence of leaving is intrinsic now, right? So the leash is gone by 12 years old. That's my personal opinion. Because everything up until that point of 12 needs to be a combination of education to be able to burn your hand on the stove, and for lack of a better metaphor than that.
Yep.
But it's people aren't going to like this, but it's like training a dog. You're going to keep the dog on the leash until he learns where the boundary is, right? You're going to, and it's the same kind of same concept, that the best thing we can do for our kids is not limit what they do. The best thing we can do is safely train them and teach them how to make decisions. And that takes time as a parent. And the reality is that a lot of parents don't have the time. And it's easier just to limit the action or limit the decision. You can't go. You
Do you think the primary driver behind the quote unquote helicopter pilot is the lack of time that the parent has to be a good parent?
Absolutely. Because two parents working now, right? And so when you truly try to think about your soccer coach, soccer player, think about this from a coaching standpoint. Think about the amount of time it takes to coach a kid on a specific discipline. It is a lot of time and discipline and effort to get them to be proficient at this thing. We're willing to do it with sports, which is kind of ironic. But do we do the same thing around concepts of, like, around the house, concepts of independence? Do we walk them through the concept of, all right, when you leave this house and you go to a friend's house, this is a common one. Oh, you can't go sleep over. You can't go to Johnny's house because Johnny's a little trouble and Johnny's parents are blah, blah, blah. All right, that works up until the point where they now can go wherever, hang out with whoever they want. Like I said, it's middle school. So we hold the leash because we feel like that's the way we're keeping them safe. But the reality is we're not teaching them how to keep themselves safe, which is the real way of keeping them safe. Teaching them, and that takes a lot more time. That takes tons of discussion of, all right, so what do you do if you're in this situation? How are you going to handle it? All right, let's role play that. Like it's the psychotherapist model. It's the cognitive behavioral model of parenting, which is we're gonna go through it. We're gonna talk through it. We're gonna develop a behavior plan for how you're gonna manage it, and then I'm gonna let the leash go. Right. But that's time. So yes, I do think helicopter parenting spawned from not having someone there to give lesson feedback all the time.
That's very interesting. I actually kind of have an opposite take of that.
Go.
Because of course I do, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I take your points. They're well researched, well thought out.
Them. They're not always well researched and well thought out.
I tell you they're wrong. No, I don't think what you're saying is wrong, because I think a lot of what you said is true. And I think that's an interesting take on it, is because the parents don't have the time. They don't take the time to go through these processes that would allow the child to learn safely. I think that helicopter parenting is more of a result of fewer children in the household. And you can even think of that on like a micro level, right? So micro level is you have your first kid and you try and do everything perfectly, right? You're like, he's going to eat the right way. He's going to go to sleep the right way. Like, we're going to read the books, right? And all that. Second kid, you just have less of you to figure it out, right? It's like, you just don't. Like, the second kid is just going to have like
and
bigger,
you don't care as much,
right? Because you have the experience. You know that some of the consequences aren't as bad as you thought, but you also don't have as much time or ability to handle it, right? Third kid is the kid who's eating crayons, right? The third kid is the kid who's using the X-Acto knife and cutting through the freaking rug,
right?
Because you just don't have the time anymore. You're just like, you know what? As long as they freaking survive, it's fine,
right?
And you could go through.
So you're agreeing with me though, because it's a time.
No, what I'm saying is you go through a playground and you find the parent who has the third kid and they don't know where their kid is.
Right.
And you go through the parent who's only got one kid, they know exactly where their kid is and whatever it is. But I think, the point that you're making is like, I think that the parents who only have one kid have too much time. They have too much time, the parent. That's why they're helicoptering. It's because they are all over that kid. Like, did you eat correctly? Are you know, like, is everything you're doing correctly? Like they map out the meals of the day. Right? Like, we're only going to buy organic stuff. We're only going to do this. We're only going to do that. Like, the helicopter parents are the parents that only have one kid.
Well,
whereas
absolutely
back in the day when we had
13 kid families.
Exactly. There was no way to helicopter. There was no such thing as helicopter parenting.
That's another
when parents
very valid
had
point.
7 kids. This is like, how could you possibly helicopter 7 kids? The mom is a full-time mom.
Right.
So it's not like she's out working. It's the reason she doesn't have time is because there's 7 of them.
Right.
And you can't keep an eye on 7 kids at once. Right. So that's the reason. Right. So it's like the more kids you have, the less likely you are to be a helicopter parent. And the more parents that only have one kid, because it's more expensive to have kids, because we've decided as a society, like, too many kids, like, that's a freaking lot of work. We want to have one kid, we have the perfect 3-person family, or we have kids later in life. So you can't have more kids because you didn't start having kids until you were late 30s. So having more than that one is difficult. But what are the consequences of that? The consequences are you've got these kids who are overparented, who have controls on every possible aspect of their life, and they don't have the ability to ever explore because they never have a moment where they're not being parented. You know? So it's like a little bit of a different take on what, but I do like, it's not really a counter to what you're saying, because I do think that they're both factors. Right, the fact that both parents are working, maybe there is that not ability to parent in a fully thought out way.
Yeah.
In terms of this part, because I'm not sure the parents always understand that this part's important. The testing and the giving the little bit of freedom and then taking it back and then giving them a little bit more, teaching them how and why. You know what I mean? And because a big part of it is it's like there's only so much you can show. Right? The touching the oven thing is important because it's like, don't touch that oven. Why? It's really freaking, don't touch the stove. It's really hot. But until you feel it, you don't know.
Until you do it.
It's the same thing. It's like if the waitress brings over the plate at dinner and says, well, just be careful, that's really hot.
The first thing you do is grab it.
You touch it because you want to know.
Yeah. How hot?
How hot is that really? Like, how hot can it possibly be? But like, experience is so important. So if you never give your kids the experience to be in pain, to suffer, and that's why, like, rich people used to send their kids to boarding school, like terrible boarding schools. Like why Trump went to this horrific boarding school, because his parents were super wealthy. His dad was, unbelievably wealthy.
Right.
So you just send your kid away. Or the royal family would send their kids to the army. There's a way to, like, toughen them up, because in reality, they have no reason to ever be tough.
Right.
You have to send your kid into that environment. And in peacetime, it's not that great of an environment to be tough. But back in the day, the royal family, back in the freaking 1800s when there was war all the time, you sent your kid to freaking war. You might never see them again.
Right.
You'd have to have another kid, right? To continue the freaking succession. But like that's parenting, is giving them what freedom I give them to say, okay, like, I need you to be a good adult. How do you be a good adult? You have to be tough. You have to be resilient. You have to have skills. You have to be able to experience freedom. And if I never give you the opportunity, you don't develop any of that. I just talked a ton. And there's one more thing I wanted to say, but I'm going to wait.
No, go.
I can't remember what it is.
Oh, that was good. You're on a roll. I liked it. It was good. I think both of the points that, my point, your point, they're all valid points in what we're experiencing and why kind of we are here. And I think there's more to it too. And let's add the third external factor of media consumption now has got everyone scared to death. Like, my kid, all the bad things are going to happen to my kid. I mean, we can digest so much media now with this generation that parents think that everyone's a kidnapper. Every kid, it's unrelenting. All the bad things that can happen to your kid are constantly in front of your face. That wasn't always the case. So you have all three.
Sometimes it's just because you didn't know about it.
Right.
Because there was no news. There was no news of the latest kidnapping.
And if there was news, it was like you would hear about, oh man, there was a horrible tragedy with a child in your state, and it was in the paper. Now you hear about the one 5,000 miles away across the country as if it's in your neighborhood.
Or you also,
it's delivered to you in the same
you
method.
also hear about the local one on the news, on social media, on like you hear about the one thing more frequently too.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
right.
It's all over you.
So I do think there's a combination of fear based from overexposure, of the time it takes to really train our kids and give them adequate feedback on, processing things and letting them fail. Being able to kind of let them fail and figure it out themselves, knowing that they're going to have to figure it out themselves. I have one of the issues that we've been I don't want to say issues, but one of the things we've been trying to coach and guide one of my kids on. We've been guiding this concept for like 5 years now. My guidance and coaching has not changed. But they are slowly, like, now that I look at what they're looking to do, it's like, okay, that's where we were 5 years ago, right? And but they had to figure that out themselves, and I have to be okay with that. Like, I can't get mad. I can't take it personal that if I give advice, it might not happen, or it might happen way, way down the road, because eventually, they got to figure that out. And so we keep hammering the same point, right? We keep bringing up the same point. We keep reinforcing our stance. And that's the coaching thing that takes time and patience and allowing them to experience the pain, right? Without saying, this is going to happen. Then we do throw out all these unrealistic shit that 90% of it doesn't really happen, or they don't experience it immediately to recognize it. And it's tough. And so the leash is, I think, a way where parents can feel safe. So is the net a way parents can feel safe.
Don't mix your metaphors.
Like my kid is in a safe environment, and I'm being a good parent,
right?
Because I'm protecting them.
And the other parent's not being a good parent. The parent who has no idea where their kid is right now. At the party.
People do that all the time. Can you believe
the kid who's just got a freaking handful of M&Ms?
Yeah.
While my kid's over here eating broccoli.
Yeah.
Can you believe? Wow, I'm doing such a great job. Can you believe?
I mean,
I'm such a good parent.
We all do that. And then it's we're all guilty of
the other thing we do, and this was what I was going to say, because you mentioned the sleepover, that we're going back in time, is we carry our own experiences and biases into parenting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the good things, right? That's one of the positive aspects, is that as the older generation, you pass on your knowledge to the younger generation. And we've had a ton of conversations. You want to be at their level, so you're communicating the right way. You want to be honest. You want it to be a conversation, so you're not lying, so that, whatever. There's all these different ways that you can deal with that. But you carry your experiences. It's impossible not to. And your experiences, as bad as they were sometimes, because you talked about sleepover. I know a couple people who've mentioned this. One of the reasons they're very, very hesitant to send their children to sleepover is because they had horrific childhood experiences at the hands of dads in those situations.
Okay.
Yeah, at those houses.
Yeah.
Right. So it's clearly,
right,
you have this whole reason for being maybe a helicopter parent in that situation. But does that mean you never expose your child to that circumstance?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if you, especially if you're not open and honest about it, if you're just no sleepovers, you have a very good reason for it, because something shitty happened to me when I was freaking doing that. Then the kid's going to rebel because everybody else is having sleepovers.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's if you tell a kid you can't do that.
Yeah.
Why? Just you can't.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just can't. Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's but their experience is, it's like social media. It's if all the kids, we know social media for girls is terrible, especially the little kids, terrible. For little girls, really bad consequences, right? There's all these consequences, but there's other consequences. If everybody is doing something in their social circle and you say no, then what are the consequences of them being left out?
The social consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about this.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all those things. So it's but you bring your biases as a parent into it, and you have to be really careful with that, because your kid is different. They're living a different life. They're in a different environment. Everything about their childhood is different from what you went through. And you want to be able to pass on that experience and pass on those boundaries, those learned I took a risk and I failed. I pushed this boundary and I got seriously hurt.
Right.
Right. But they need to experience a little bit of it for themselves. If they don't, then they're going to do it behind your back. Mm-hmm. They're going to do it when you're not looking.
Yeah.
The first chance they get. It's like that dog is not on the leash and has been on the leash the whole time. You let go of the leash. As soon as they figure out they're not on that leash,
They're gone.
They're gone. Boom.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Same thing with the kid I was talking about. Little 3-year-old. As soon as the parents took their eye off that kid for a second, gone. Right. But so there's a better version of that. This methodical CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy version of this, where it's like you're
trained
talking and giving experience. I think a good way to do it is put in sports is the classic way, because now you're teaching them life lessons in this really controlled environment, losing, winning, working with people, listening to somebody, like all these things that school's part of it too. Right.
Yeah.
Like these are all the experiences that are safe, where they can experience a lot of those things, right? And that's what we do, right? We put them in environments where they can fail and that they can. And then there's areas where they just can't. They can't run out into the street. You know what I mean? Like the only time I've really, well, yeah, exactly. The only time I really hurt my boy is like when he freaking ran. He was like 3 and he ran towards the street. We were living on a busy street. Freaking, like he needed to know that was not acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, like he needed to know that there was no long leash for that.
Yeah.
The leash was freaking iron. Right? There was no net.
Yeah.
It was a wall.
It was big.
Yeah, exactly. No net with holes in it.
Brick
the
wall.
Boom.
Wall.
You cannot do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, ball goes across the street. Is he just going to stay on the side of the road and never cross the street? Well, no, you look both ways. You're safe and there's training.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I talked a lot again.
It's all right. It's a good one.
So what are our takeaways here?
I think our takeaways are this. At the end of the day, we're all as parents going to have different levels of comfort. We talked about a bunch of different examples of, this kid with this level of comfort, this adult with this level of comfort because of things happen as a kid. We're all going to have different levels of comfort. If we break it down to the concept of, are we just limiting our children for the sake of what we say, is their safety and for our comfort? Or are we teaching them how to engage in all situations that might have some risk and some danger? And if we're educating and providing opportunities for them to, in a safe environment, learn and grow with the point of getting that leash off them, then we're doing the right thing. Are we allowing them failure? Then because all of this is a fear of letting them fail and experiencing failure. It goes way beyond just safety.
It's embedded in the parent.
When we talk about
my failures, my kid fails, and I failed at that too. It's like this double sword.
Yes. Are we always defending our kid when maybe they don't make the team and it's, and it's this person's fault, or they didn't get an A and it's the teacher's fault? Or are we letting them own that failure and teaching them how to manage it and go through it? And I think that's the thing. Everything needs to be a teachable moment. We got to spend the time to teach, and we have to teach over and over again, because it's like the soccer drill. They're not going to get it the first time you teach them how to do this thing. They're not going to get it. They got to hear it over and over again. And if they hear over and over for us, it's the teacher's fault, coach's fault, coach. You know what they learn? Nothing. They don't learn how to that. So safety and accountability, it's all taught over and over again. You got to spend time as a parent. And that's how you can let go of the leash. That's how you can let go of the leash.
Parenting is hard.
No, it's fucking easy. Brilliant. Just read the book.
Buy the book. We have to start interrupting the video and put the book. Buy Brian's book. Brian's fantastic. You've been listening. You've been watching. Link is in the description.
Yeah. If you've listened to this part of the video, you might as well. Great Christmas gift, by the way. We are time dating now we're definitely going to time date the.
Well, we're wintered. You got the winter beard. I got the winter beard.
Great Christmas gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Art of Fatherhood, Paint by Numbers. Or Paint by Numbers, The Art of Fatherhood is how it actually is. Yeah. Right? Never do the subtitle first. I can't find it. I'm Brian LaFauci.
Patrick Marino.
Until next time.
Thank you.